All right, good morning, everybody. We are live, and welcome to CertiPay's Coffee Break number 16 of the year. I am your host, Rachel Comella, and I am here with our moderator Rachel Jameson. So you have Rachel and Rachel in the house. And I am drinking a fantastic Guatemalan from Temple, which I always enjoy. And I also have Cindy Merkel's 2 shots of espresso, dark roast Americano. Cheers, Cindy. Rachel J., do you have a coffee?
I'm going hardcore today. I have good old fashioned H2O.
Oh, boring. All right. Well, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about the minimum wage increase, and specifically Florida's minimum wage increase is changing next week, but we have seen a lot of minimum wage changes throughout this year, and there are quite a few states that have a minimum wage change in January. So this really does apply to everybody, and we're going to see some minimum wage changes each year for the next several, where everybody's kind of catching up to that $15 an hour number. So what can you do? What do you need to know about it? And let's give you some tools and steps to help you deal with this and think of it in terms of a positive. So for today's conversation, what and when is the increase, and some pros and cons, additional benefits, and what can you do to prepare? We've put together a 4-step preparation process, and I know, for those of you who have an increase coming in January, you have more time, but if you haven't really thought about it until this week, you've just got a week, but you can do it. It's okay. No worries. How are we doing, guys? Everybody good? Also, as always, we put all of these recordings on our website under the news tab. You can find all the recordings for Coffee Break. And if you have questions today as we go along, please put them down in that chat box. Both Rachel and I are going to keep an eye on that chat box, and we'll take care of you and answer any of your questions that you have. And also, we're going to talk about several solutions and ideas. They may not all apply to you. You can pick and choose what makes sense for your business, and we're not telling you what to do. We're just giving you some recommendations that may help you. So I know that some of these are challenging topics today, and so we want to make sure we give you some tools to help with that. So a little snapshot, Florida's current minimum wage is $8.65. And I know, different states have different minimums. And we are going to that $10 an hour number next Thursday, the 30th. So I want you to pay attention to that if you have employees in Florida, because it isn't the week of the 30th, it isn't the payroll cycle after the 30th. It changes on the 30th. That means any hours that are worked on the 30th have to be paid at the new rate. So I know we had a question come up previously about the payroll cycle, and then, once the pay date is after that, but that's not the case. It's the change occurs on the 30th. So hours worked on the 30th have to be paid at the correct rate. You are more than welcome to change it before that, but as of the 30th, so when we know that occurs, that day falls on a Thursday, and most people don't have a pay cycle that ends on a Wednesday. So you may have to do some multiple rates for that particular pay cycle, or change it the cycle before that. So think about that now as we approach that date. Same thing goes for a January 1 change. If you look at where that date falls in your pay cycle, the hours worked on the effective date of the change must be paid at the new rate. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to guess that you're all shaking your heads. Yes. Thanks, Jessica.
Yes.
Okay. There was, on January 30th of this year, we did have that federal contractor minimum wage jump to $15 an hour. So that was specific to contractors. So here we go going forward, and this again is Florida, and we have a great chart that if you need it, let us know and we'll send you. We have a whole state by state minimum wage change chart, and we're happy to share that with you. But in particular, we know we've got this $1 an hour increase in Florida that is going to go each year on the 30th until we get to $15 an hour. And then after that, the idea is that there will be an annual inflation adjustment. And again, we know this is something that is occurring across the country in other states. So your state may have a January 1 change coming up for 2022, and then each January moving forward. Again, everybody's kind of moving toward the same goal, is getting to that 15 number and then inflation adjustments after that. So make sure you know what your state's change is and what that looks like. So I think it's important to address some of these pros. And I think people hear minimum wage increase and they think, oh no, it's going to cost us so much money. We're going to have to raise our prices. We're going to have to do all these different things. Put that aside, because there are cons, but there are a lot of pros that you don't necessarily think of. So I want to just touch on these now, and we're going to talk in a little bit more detail in a bit. But it's actually a boost to the economy, because what happens is that now you've got more money in people's pockets. And when you do that, people spend more. So increasing that minimum wage number can be a great boost to the economy. And this is historically what we've seen over the last several decades. Whenever we do that boost, we also see that boost to the economy. It's a really nice little stimulus that occurs. And so you see the increase in spending for goods and services and different things like that. So it's really nice to see that.
Hey, Rach.
There could be, yeah.
There's a question in the chat box. You want to address it now or later?
Let's see what we've got. Is there a minimum amount of time a jurisdiction has to give notice of a wage increase, for example, no less than, so typically wage increases are voted on, and it's something that comes down, and we have a long leeway to know that. So those are typically done through the voting, and we know when they're going to go into effect. I don't know if there's minimum requirements on that piece of it, but we always know about it well in advance. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question properly, but we, from the Department of Labor standpoint, we don't have a minimum notification that we have to give to employees, because we already have that going into it. You know, we knew about this wage increase last year. Does that make sense? Did I get it? Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. And good question, because, you know, Lori's in California and nobody gets more increases than those guys. So she's always keeping an eye on that. Okay. So more jobs. This is something, you know, now people, you've got that little boost to the economy. You've got more goods and services being spent and stimulated. And so now more jobs. So you've got more activity, more things are happening. And with the purchasing power, the demand increases. And now we're adding more positions to it. So it's really, again, that boost has a nice trickle down with some other pros that go with it. And you see, it's a great boost to your employees' families as well. You know, maybe they couldn't buy an extra pair of shoes for their kids, or somebody needs glasses, or they are able to go out to dinner with the family more frequently. You know, there are a lot of things where you're actually putting more dollars into your employees' families' financial overall bucket. So now you're really helping out all of these people. So some nice pros there. Of course, it doesn't make sense to talk about the pros without at least covering some of the cons. And this is what people think when we have the wage increase. There's this fear of a negative situation. And so here's what could happen: a higher cost of products and services. Saying kind of the reverse of what we just said. People automatically think there's going to be a financial issue, and so they might pass that right on to the consumer. We know this can happen. And so you might have the cost of certain goods or services go up. You may see that out of fear. Historically, we see a little bit of a hiring fear, and where people might do a hiring freeze until they know what's going to happen. Or if you know you've got to have the minimum wage increase, you might not fill a position as quickly as you would because you're not sure how that's going to look for your overall payroll dollars. So we do sometimes see a little bit of a hiring fear or a hiring freeze as a result while people figure out how it's gonna level out. And it typically does go right back to normal, but that can be a negative, is that people aren't hiring. I don't see that happening because we're in a little bit of a different climate this year than what we have seen historically, because everybody needs the help. I mean, that's our biggest concern right now, or our biggest complaint that we're getting from our clients is, I can't find good help, or people don't want to return to work, or we need help with recruiting. So we know this is a big issue. I think you're going to continue to search and hire people when you find good people, regardless of the minimum wage right now. So more employee outsourcing. This is typically, again, historically what we see is that fear of filling the positions, and you might go to outsourcing again until you know how it's going to level out. So this is the outsourcing piece may be a pro for business owners and a negative for employees who are looking for a position. But these things we see historically balance out. How we doing, guys?
So good so far. So far, so good. Excuse me.
Great. So good so far.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some specific benefits and byproducts. This is kind of my favorite because they're things that you don't always think of, but this is, again, historically what we have seen. And also, most recently, we've seen a few of our business owners go through these steps, and the steps that we're going to talk about, but we've seen the business owners take a look at these specific steps, and then we're already seeing these benefits pop up, which is great. So the first thing is job satisfaction. So what happens is you've got people who have a higher level of creativity and collaboration. There's a greater level of communication happening internally. When people are satisfied with their job, they don't leave. And when you reduce your turnover numbers, you are saving huge amounts of money. If you can keep one person from leaving, you're saving tens of thousands of dollars. And we know, can anybody tell me, just type it in the chat, how much does turnover cost us? Let's see how we get a quick answer. Anybody? Any takers? No takers, that's okay. 300%. Yes, there it is. Jose wins. 3 times salary. That's right. It is 3 times the individual salary. It's huge. When you have a high turnover percentage, let's say if your turnover is over 20%, it's huge amounts of money. And you need to figure out why. You need to figure out, stop those people from leaving. If you've got good employees, you need to figure out why they're staying. Ask those people, why are you staying? And then figure that out and duplicate that. Get that message spread across so you can reduce that turnover. Turnover is just money down the drain. And you're losing all of the corporate memory that goes with those people, all of the training time, all of your search time on the front side. It's a big money drain. So if you can keep people and having them satisfied and having that increased collaboration and creativity, that's going to build some retention for you. It's a big place where you can save money. And when we have that increase in pay, that increase in minimum wage, people are more satisfied. They're not going to look. They're going to stay where they are. They're going to be happy in their job. And that turnover number isn't going to be so high. Loyalty. If employees are satisfied with their pay, they're likely to stay. And so when you have, like, you're adding that loyalty piece, because you've got people who they're not worried about money. They're not worried about, I know I can get more money if I look around. They're going to be loyal to you, and you took the steps to increase their pay. So you're going to add that loyalty layer, and those people are less likely to leave. Motivation. This is another great thing. Employees are more motivated because you've made that change. You've increased the money in their pockets, so they're motivated to keep their job. So they're going to work hard. They're going to meet their expectations. They want to be there. They want to keep this job. So the motivation level is increased. And finally, the performance. This is a big one because sometimes you may have somebody who's got 2 jobs to make ends meet, and now you've increased that pay number for them, so they don't need 2 jobs anymore. They can make all of their bill payments and make ends meet on a single income, so they only need that 1 job. Now they're getting more sleep, they're more rested, they're more focused, they're more invested in your organization and their performance and job with you. So you're going to get a more engaged employee who will perform better for you. So these are just kind of some of the byproducts that we see, and we've seen it recently in some of our clients. It's nice. I talked about 4 steps. I see, Jose, I see your question. I'm not really going into detail on turnover and retention. I'm just kind of talking about, we're going to talk about how, how to manage a pay increase. But when we talk about that 3 times salary number in turnover, we really talk about all of the search that goes into the front side, the costs of any kind of recruiting pieces, interviews, reviewing resumes, applicant tracking, and then also all of the training that you have to now put into a new employee, all of the training that you put into the employee you lost, and then any of the work that the employee who left had to do that you had to redistribute costs you a lot of human hours, and then the corporate memory that you lose. So these are some of the things that we add into that 3 times number, just to kind of touch on that. But we did a turnover and retention coffee break. So if you want more details on that, you can find it on our website. Thanks for asking that. It's an important topic. So how to prepare? What can we do? And again, like I said, you may pick and choose the things that you do for your individual business. We're not saying do every single one of these things. Do the things that make sense for you, but these are things that will really give you some good information. And if you go through each step and look at each one and see, does this work for you? Is this something that you can do to help you? I think you'll get some, you'll be prepared for any wage increases as they come. So first of all, prepare a budget for the increase. And so what do I mean by that? You need to know what you're dealing with in the first place. So take a look at all of your existing wages. Create a list and rank it from highest paid per hour to lowest paid per hour, and then draw that line. Who is below the minimum wage? Who is below the new minimum wage number? And then see, how far below, what are we talking about? And then look in more detail, how many hours do those individuals work on a regular basis? Get some data. Know exactly what you're talking about. How many people are there? How many hours are worked? What are the real numbers? What is the difference? So once you have that information, now you can kind of start to create a plan. And you really want to look at not only those people who are below the threshold, but now look right around who's at the current minimum wage and who's slightly above that minimum wage number, and figure out what kind of changes do you need to make. Is there a little bit of a compression as you push up? And I talk about 2 different ripple effects. The first is on your individual positions where You may have somebody who, let's use Florida as the example, at the $10 rate. You may have somebody who needs to go from $8.65 or $9 up to that $10 minimum wage. And so who do you have currently at $10? You know, you can't have your brand new employee with no experience meeting the same as a shift leader or supervisor. So do you need to take a look at that and push the shift leader or supervisors up a little bit above that? Now, when we see a ripple effect, just like you throw a stone into a lake, you see first there's big ripples and then they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So let's say you have to go an increase of $1 for a $9 person to 10. You don't necessarily have to go another full dollar for that $10 an hour person to 11. You know, maybe you increase that person to 10.50 or 10.75. So each increase is going to create a little bit of a smaller push until you get to kind of that mid-level, it's leveled out, if that makes sense. And if anybody needs help with this, or you have some detailed questions specific to your business, let us know. We can help you with that. And so really get that information. Now, the second ripple effect that I talk about is between you and your competition. So some people have chosen to go straight to $15 an hour. Some people have chosen to do the increase earlier than others. And so that kind of pushes your competition, or pushes you around if your competition does different things, or you could be the one as the driver pushing the competition. So think about that as a ripple effect. If I can go down the street, I know they've gone to $12 an hour versus somebody who went to 15 versus you're still at 10, or you've decided to go to 12. And, you know, like think about some different things. So know where you are in your market and how that fits for you. How are we doing? Everybody still with me?
I think so. All is quiet so far.
All right, it's quiet. Okay. So let's go to step 2. Now you've got a list of employees, the wages, the hours worked. So you have a real understanding of what you're doing. And then you get a total there. How much is this going to cost you? And what is the difference, the dollar amount? Is it really as big as you think or not? Take a look. Now you have info. Step 2, look at your expenses, all of your expenses, not just payroll and wages. Look at everything. How much are you spending on all of your expenses? So take a close look at, can you streamline a process somewhere? Is there a place where you can kind of trade dollars? If you add this technology, it saves you X number of dollars in another place. So pay attention to other things. Can you outsource some administrative functions or compliance functions? Is there a place where you can make a process easier? And then we did talk about that turnover number. Turnover is huge. So you know it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to do the minimum wage increase for any of your compression or ripple effect. Take a look at your turnover. If you can then reduce turnover by 1 or 2 employees, then you'll more than pay for the difference. So pay attention to the kind of things that can really save you information there, can save you dollars if you trade them out the right way. Good. So now we got step 1. Know what the difference is going to be, understand the full process. Number 2, take a look at all of your expenses. Where can you trade out dollars? Makes a difference. Let's go to the next step. Okay, we're going to dig in. So take a look at your job descriptions. And I say this carefully because you may, and I'm not saying go fire somebody, but I'm saying take a look at all of the job tasks and see if you can redistribute jobs to create job descriptions that match that pay. Or if somebody leaves, is there a way to redistribute the work without filling a new position just yet until you know? Think about trading these dollars so that it's not a big hit for you financially. And you may, like I said, you may increase your sales. So you've got to add the positions back in, but be careful about it. Think about each job description and make sure it's accurate and up to date. And is there any time in there that can be reallocated to be more effective? And I am choosing my words very carefully because I want you to hear that. I want you to see, are my job descriptions accurate? And is there a change there that will benefit you? Is there a change there that can help streamline a process? You add some technology, then go back and look at job descriptions and see what can you trade out. Maybe you freed up time for an individual and they can do something else that helps you in another area. So pay close attention to that. Job descriptions can be changing on a regular basis. So it's always good to keep them up to date now in particular. You want to notify any employees that are going to be a part of this change and have a conversation one-on-one. Don't send an email. Don't just send them a notice in their pay stub, and don't do it in a group meeting. You can have a general meeting. Hey, minimum wage is going up. We'll be speaking to people individually if you want, but have a conversation one-on-one ahead of time. Wanted to let you know, here's some changes that apply to you. This is what it looks like. People are going to be excited. And if you made changes to their job description, make sure you go over the details of that one-on-one with individuals. Give them an opportunity to ask questions and give you some feedback and have a two-way conversation. Take a look at any change forms and fill out any change forms. So if you're doing a rate change with somebody, make sure you do that change form. Hopefully you're doing that all electronically. If you're not, we have solutions for you. And make sure you have the dates and what the change is, what the amounts are and whatnot. If you have pay banding or wage scales, anything like that, make sure you update them. A trend we're seeing is job descriptions have a pay range included. So go back, make sure that those are up to date with a correct range in there. Nice place to look for some change language. And then finally, in this step, pay attention to overtime. So overtime is another one of those places where it can be extremely expensive, and you really want to pay attention to this. So we talk about turnover and retention as a big dollar trade of savings. OT is another one. And so you want to manage overtime with a discussion on policy and manage that with performance and policy instead of you can't tell anyone you're not going to pay them their overtime. If somebody works overtime, then you're obligated to pay them overtime at time and a half of the minimum wage. So I know some people say, well, can I decline paying overtime if it wasn't approved? No, you cannot. If somebody actually worked overtime, you're obligated to pay it. But you can manage overtime with conversation and policy and discussions and disciplinary action.
Hey, Rachel.
Yeah.
Also, just to confirm something I've seen in the past, sometimes people like to, rather than pay overtime, use comp time, but not in the same work week, and you can't do that either.
Yeah, and you can't do that. You have to pay overtime based on that. And I don't have that many clients who do the comp time anymore because of this, because it's too sticky. And so when there's overtime, you are obligated to pay for all the hours that people work. Can't be paid in comp time. That's not pay. It has to be paid in pay. And you are obligated to pay time and a half for overtime for hours worked over 40. Generally, there are some state differences. Lori, California has over 8 in a day, and then double time on the 7th day. So there are some different requirements in different states, but generally it's over 40 in a week with a few outliers. And so let's take a look here at what it can mean for you.
Hey, Rachel,
yeah, what do you got?
Sorry, there's a couple of questions in the chat box that pertain to what we just talked about.
OT is based on the rate that you are paying the individual. You cannot change the overtime based on minimum wage. Whatever the rate is that you pay the individual, you have to pay at time and a half of that rate. And in addition, if you've got employees who are hourly non-exempt employees and you pay them bonus dollars and extra dollars, then you have to factor all of those dollars earned into the overtime payment. So something that you want to make sure whenever you have overtime due, you have to look at all of the earnings earned in the pay week. I see a question on salary. If an employee is on salary, do we have to pay overtime? No. So salary, if they are truly classified as a salary exempt employee, they do not get overtime, and you do not track their hours either. So they should be, and the concept is a salaried employee is measured by the work they do, not by the time they work, versus a non-exempt employee is measured by the time they work, not the work they do. And we did a full coffee break on pay classifications. So please, if you are not sure, we talk in detail about the pay classifications and overtime and salary versus non-exempt versus exempt. We also talked about 1099. So please, if you have any of those detailed questions on pay classifications, go to CertiPay's site. On the news tab, look for coffee break and find the one on pay classifications. It's a good one. All right, so let's look at our overtime example here, just so you can see how much it's costing you. Let's look at one employee works 50 hours on a normal basis. So you did that grid, you know your employees, everybody is ranked, you've got their hours worked, you've got their pay rate, you've got their overtime numbers. So you've got one employee who works 50 hours a week. So if the new rate is $10 an hour and that employee works 50 hours, 10 of those hours are going to be overtime. So that means 40 hours are at the regular $10 rate, $400. 10 of those hours are at time and a half, that's $150. So now one employee's pay with 50 hours total in the week is going to be $550. Now, let's say you have two employees, you take those 50 hours, and I'm not saying fire your full-time person and get two part-timers. That's not what I'm saying. I only used 2 hours, two employees at 25 for example purposes, but you can keep your full-time person at 40 hours and add a part-timer at 10 hours, or any variation of that where you now have two employees doing straight time, right? Are you following me? So now you've got two employees totaling 50 hours in that week at $10 an hour. You don't have any overtime now in this scenario. So now your pay is $500, but you still covered all 50 hours of work. And so that $50 of overtime for one person in the week can add up. Now, let's say 10 people do that in a week, that's $500. Now, in a year, you've paid $26,000 in overtime. And all you have to do is monitor your overtime. Keep your employees at that 40 number or under your overtime limit for your state. So if you pay attention to overtime, right here, this person just had 10 employees working overtime in the week. It costs $26,000. So overtime adds up. Pay attention to this. And here you're actually adding positions if you need it. So overtime is a great place to pay close attention to. And yes, you still have to pay it if they go over. You have to pay it a time and a half, but you are allowed to monitor it and pay attention to it and make sure you know when somebody's approaching that 40 mark, if you need to send them home or whatever. Make sure your policy is, make sure the expectation is you're only going to be working 40 hours a week or whatever it is. How are we doing? Are we good on that?
Looks good.
Yay. Okay. Step 4. So a few other things that you want to consider. There's going to be a new wage and hour poster and little tiny tip for you. I usually tell people, go get your signs, go get your required postage and signage for free on the Department of Labor's website. If somebody's told you you have to pay for $20 a month for a fancy poster subscription, you don't need to. Everything that you are required to hang is free on the DOL's website or even on your state's website. So, and you can go find all of your required posters, your minimum wage, your work comp information, all of the language and information, print them off, just a regular piece of paper, laminate it, put a hole, like a ring binder hole in the corner and hang that in your break room. You don't need to go get a fancy poster. You just have to have them available. So you may need to get some new poster signage information for your break room. Take a look at any active postings you have. If you need to update the pay banding or pay language on any active postings, don't forget about those out there. And work comp. Work comp is you want to pay attention to your work comp codes because this is tied to payroll dollars. So if you are making payments on an estimate, go back and take a look at what this increase will do to your work comp numbers so you don't get hit with a big difference in your audit. If you're not doing pay as you go work comp, this could be an issue for you. So go take a look at that and make sure that gets updated. And then also if you have anyone out on light duty or if you have somebody who's doing light duty, take a look at those pay numbers as well. Insurance. So if you've got life insurance, disability, AD&A, if you've got insurance numbers that you need to take a look at, make sure you adjust those amounts as well. So not too bad, really. When we take a look at all of this, there are a lot more pros than cons. And after I take a look at this, I see the cons actually switch over to the pro side. So I'm really looking at it from a glass half full lens, like I always do, if you guys know me personally. So it's not all bad. There's a lot of really big pluses and positive byproducts from this kind of change. And turnover and overtime could be your key to balancing that out without having to make other changes. So don't be afraid to go dig into those numbers and see if you can find all your dollars there and trade it out. We're here if you need us. Get help if you don't get help from us, get help somewhere if you need it. There are some great places out there where you can get help. CertiPay is always here to support you and help you with these kinds of changes and updates. And we are so appreciative of all of you, and we are here to support you. So any questions, or Rachel J., any final thoughts or anything to add?
I don't have anything additional to add.
Any questions, guys? You're all experts now. You know what to do.
Anybody?
No? That's it. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining today. We look forward to seeing you on all of our coffee breaks. Please reach out if you need us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.